and services, which are vital to the public safety and confidence during this meeting, during this emergency. As such, this meeting will be conducted without a quorum of the body physically present in the same location. At this time, I'm also welcoming members of the public accessing this meeting remotely. Even though this meeting is being conducted in a unique manner and under unique circumstances, the usual rules of conduct and decorum will apply. Any person found to be disrupting this meeting will be asked to cease the disruption. Should the disruptive behavior continue thereafter, that person will be removed from this meeting. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their name, please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. And Matt, if you're going to be with us for the meeting duration, would you please be the person that calls the roll for us?
Be happy to, of course.
Let's do it.
All right, let's begin with Dave Senecal.
Yes, I'm here. I am alone in my office in the lower level.
All right, thanks, Dave. Linda Murray?
I'm here by myself at my house.
Okay, thank you. Dave Bowers. Dave, are you there? Can you unmute your microphone if you can hear us? And please let us know if you're there. Okay, Dave is not with us. Paul.
Paul O'Brien, I'm here by myself in my home.
Okay, so that's 3 members present.
We do, just point of order, do we have quorum, no quorum? How does this work?
You have quorum.
Okay, thank you. And if you wouldn't mind, folks, for all of us, if you're not speaking, would you mind muting your mic? It would help all of us because sometimes we get a little echo chatter going back and forth. So let's begin. Mr. Town Manager, welcome to the meeting. Do we have a need for a non-public session tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. We do have a need for non-public under RSA 91A:3, Roman numeral 2, letter A, employment.
Christine, can you help me with this?
Mr. Bowers, we can hear you. So welcome to the meeting. Just let us know that you're there and we can proceed.
Well, I'm not a guru on internet, and I want to be part of it, but I don't know what to do. Okay, the microphone's on. The camera says turn on camera. Are you there?
All right, so just sit tight. We'll keep going. Okay, consideration of minutes. My understanding is the minutes for last week's meeting just got posted today, so we are not going to have a review and comment on the minutes. We'll do that at our next regularly scheduled meeting. First item of business, unless there's any objection, is public hearings. We have a temporary event permit for the Calvary Wolfeboro to host National Day of Prayer, virtual religious event at the Wolf Field, Brewster Field, on May 7th, 2020 from 11 to 1, and that's permit 2022. Is the applicant here to speak to that?
I am. Justin Marbury here to speak to that. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, actually the application is for, everything is correct except what we're asking for is to use the Cape Park gazebo by the town docks. We have in the past annually we have used Brewster Field, but in order to stream it, because we're not going to have a physical gathering, in order to stream it, it would be impossible, more or less, to do it from Brewster Field. We weren't sure that Brewster would even allow us to, and so we're asking if the town would give us permission to use the Cape Park gazebo by the town docks, Wolfeboro Television, and Timothy Goodwin would stream it to the YouTube channel, to livestream.com, and to Wolfeboro TV, and it would be 5 pastors each from one of 5 different churches in the Wolfeboro area. We would be social distancing, of course, in one at a time, leading a section of prayer on the National Day of Prayer, which is tomorrow. The actual time of the stream will be noon to 1, but we will need to set up, and so we're asking for the use of the gazebo, and to have permission to use that from noon to 1, and then a buffer to set up.
I guess at this time, so you can all tell out there that I'm new at this, so I'm learning. Is this the time that I open this up for public questions, or do I open this up for selectmen's questions? So I'll
Open it up to the public.
Okay, I'm going to open this up for public questions. Anybody out there in the public want to ask a question? Please identify yourself if you do, and let's go for it. Hearing none, I will close the public session. Select board members, anybody have any questions or comments from us?
Would you like a motion?
I would, if there's no questions or comments.
I move to approve the Calvary Wolfeboro to host the National Day of Prayer, a virtual religious event at Cape Park Gazebo on May 7th, 2020 from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
That's Mr. Senecal seconds. Please have a roll call vote, Mr. Sullivan.
Absolutely. Dave Senecal?
Yes.
Thank you. Linda Murray?
Yes.
Paul O'Brien?
Yes.
And it looks like Dave Bowers is still muted, so I'm going to mark him as not present. 3-0.
Mr. Senecal? I didn't hear Mr. Senecal's vote. I'm sorry.
Mr. Senecal said yes. Yes, he said yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so we have a 3-0 vote. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is public input. Public input is 3 minutes per person, not to exceed 15 minutes in total. Customarily, we ask for any request to be sent in via email. I do understand that we have one member of the public who does want to offer some public input. And with that, Suzanne Ryan, the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Paul. I have a question on the lease that I believe you're going to be discussing for the skidoos or whatever they are, the jet skis. Is that on the agenda? I don't have an agenda in front of me.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the question, but I don't need the answer at this point. I'll listen in on your discussion. But as of 2014, there was no rent charge for these skidoos to use that dock. They had a dock and a half a dock. And so the question would be, are you going to charge rent this year? And if not, why? It would be a nice income for the taxpayers as a revenue. That's the first question. The second question is relevant to the finances of the warrant article for the freight station. And I'm here to speak as a taxpayer. I'm not interested in speaking about the use. I'm concerned about the funding. And there are 3 or 4 iterations of that warrant article, which I'm sure has led everybody to some confusion. A lot of effort and work has gone in by everybody. But it appears, if you fine-tunely read the last warrant article, is that and after and as well that they would ask for the occupancy before they get the work done. It leads to some confusion in that warrant article. And I'm hoping as, excuse me?
Questions there? Do you have a specific question you want to ask? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. The question is, will you please assure the taxpayers that the revenues that are in a capital reserve account will not be turned over before the grant is received or before you get certification that they have the funds to do this project? Some sort of an accounting from the museum folks that they have cash available to do and complete that project. That would be the question. The second question to that project, since no money was funded to do any external work, and yet I believe at the last meeting, Mr. Ford had asked the board's input on doing that little section of road there on Railroad Avenue. And I see that when discussion was on that particular subject sometime back on another warrant article to do with the railroad, Mr. Ford stated, he provided a brief overview of the need to address the property line and the layout of the road. And this would make the road an official town road. So the question is, have we got money for surveying? Do we know if it's an official town road? And I would hope that we're not taking money from another road project, either this year or last year's incumbent or leftover money to do that section of Railroad Avenue, since the project by the association won't be completed for a year to 2 years. Thank you.
Okay, Suzanne, thank you very much. Questions noted. Anybody else from the public?
I would like to just reply on behalf of the jet skis, if that would be okay.
Why don't we wait until we have the conversation about the jet skis?
Perfect.
Hang in there with us, my friend, and mute your mic if you wouldn't mind. Thank you, sir.
Yep, it's muted. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, let's talk about the bulk vote. We have several items on the bulk vote with the approval of the board. I had asked independently for some information from Brenda LaPointe about item F, which is Church Hill Road. I believe you've got material. Mr. Bowers, if you could mute your mic.
I can't get it. Seem to be getting on, okay?
Okay, just mute your mic if you get a chance.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine. I'd just like to ask that we not include item F. If there's any objection to that, we should talk about it next week.
I will, but then I asked Brenda for the documentation on the governor's order, order number 25, and she sent me that in another piece of paper. So from what the documents I've got, this is absolutely fine, but you may want to get a hold of her to get those documents.
I have them as well. I think the rest of the board needs to look at them so that we can vote with heads up. So unless there's objection, I'd like to move item F off the agenda. If anybody wants to, any selectmen want to talk about items A through E, if not, I'll entertain a motion for that vote.
I
do. You do. Go ahead, Linda.
Yes. On E, when we're looking at the number 2, Port Wedland, where there are 2 things we're doing there, and I think we should note it. We have an okay for a veterans credit, and we have an okay for a solar. And then on the next one, 95 Governor Wentworth Highway, we have okay on a veterans credit, but a not denial on a disabled veterans credit. And I think those should be noted in the minutes if that's what we're doing.
Okay.
Okay?
So, just for clarity, item E, number 2,
Mhm.
okay on veterans credit, okay on solar.
Yep.
Item 3, 95 Governor Wentworth, okay on veterans credit, not okay on disabled veterans credit.
That's correct.
Okay.
Would you like a motion to remove F from the bulk vote?
Yes, and table it till next meeting. That would be great, Linda. Thank you.
And that's my motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second by Mr. Sullivan. Any discussion? Roll call vote, Mr. Sullivan, please.
Dave Senical?
Yes.
Thank you. Linda Murray?
I've
Yes.
not left. Look here.
And Paul O'Brien?
Yes.
And Dave, are you listening? Can you hear us?
I'm trying to hear it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, did you hear the bulk vote discussion?
Yes, I'm
We're moving
voting
item
for
F.
it. I'm having a huge amount of problems with my internet, but anyway, go ahead because I'm sort of a klutz, but go ahead.
All right.
Okay, so we're just removing item F here.
Thank you. So I also now need a vote for items A through E, inclusive of the changes that Selectman Murray has offered.
I'll move that. So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second, and we're going to let Mr. Bowers be the second on that one tonight. Roll call vote, Mr. Sullivan.
Dave Senical?
Yes.
Linda Murray?
Yes.
Paul O'Brien?
Yes, sir.
And Dave Bowers?
Yes.
Thank you.
All
4-0.
right. Mr. Bowers is with us. Okay, the next item on our agenda is board committee appointments. The first set of board committee appointments is for the Wolfeboro Waters Committee. And unless there's an objection, let me read the slate of candidates that are up for appointment. And I believe they've all sent us letters of interest for these appointments. The first is Mr. Warren Muir, member for a 3-year term. Second is Arthur Slocum Jr., member for a 3-year term. Third is Richard Massey, member for a 2-year term. The fourth is Abigail Adams, MD, member for a 2-year term. The fifth is Michael Turner, member for a 1-year term. Mary DeVries, alternate member, 3-year term. Those are the slate of candidates. Do I have any discussion, or should I just take a motion from you folks?
Question is any of those candidates here want to say anything?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I apologize that I didn't do that. Anybody on the candidate slate who's here who wants to speak to their candidacy? See, I'm really new at this. Hearing none, let's close that and let's go to a motion. Do I have a motion to appoint these candidates for the terms that are identified?
I'll move that.
Second.
Any discussion?
Please.
Okay, roll call vote, Mr. Sullivan, please.
Dave Senical?
Yes.
Linda Murray?
Yes.
Paul O'Brien?
Yes.
And Dave Bowers?
Yes.
4-0.
All right. I'm getting good at this. Okay, the next is for the Economic Development Committee. And we have 2 candidates for nomination. One is Kathy Eaton, member for a 1-year term. And the second is Carrie Duran, member for a 2-year term. And I do believe I saw Carrie on the screen here. If you are here and you'd like to speak to your candidacy, there you are, Carrie. If you'd like to speak to your candidacy, please feel free to do so. There you go.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to apply, and I'm excited to have the chance to kind of give my perspective, being a longtime resident in Wolfeboro and being a single mom of 3, and I'm excited for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. And is Kathy Eaton with us tonight? Okay, Members, may I please have a motion to approve the slate of candidates?
So moved.
We're gonna let Mr. Bowers have the motion on that one, and Linda with a second. How's that?
That's
Okay,
good.
any discussion? Any
Good, Paul.
discussion? Oh, Linda's playing with her cat. Hang
My
on.
cat is just really into me tonight.
Okay, could I have a roll call vote, Mr. Sullivan?
Dave Senical,
Yes.
Linda Murray,
Yes.
Linda Murray's cat. I'm sorry, Dave Bowers,
Yes.
and Paul O'Brien.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, 4-0.
Conservation Commission, Dan Coons, member for 3 years. Sarah Silk, alternate member for 3 years. Is either Mr. Coons or Sarah with us tonight?
Isn't
I
there
think you had
Brian Guilford?
There's a Brian Gifford in there too, Paul.
My apologies. I was too busy looking at Linda's cat. And Brian Gifford, member for a 3-year term. Is Brian with us tonight? Okay. Do I have a motion to accept that slate of candidates?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote, Matt.
Dave Senical,
Yes.
Linda Murray,
Yes.
Paul O'Brien,
Yes.
and Dave Bowers.
Yes.
Right.
All in favor.
And last is the Cable TV Advisory Committee. We overlooked the appointment of Timothy Goodwin, a Wolfeboro Community TV member. So he is now a member on the slate for a member for 2 years. And Matt, do you have an update on the other person who was contemplating joining us?
Yeah, absolutely. Tim Cronin, I had been in discussions with him to join the committee several months ago, but ultimately Tim has had some exciting news in his family, a new grandchild, and many things going on. So he felt it was best to step back from being on the committee. Therefore, his appointment should not be considered to the committee this evening.
Okay. So then we have one member, Mr. Goodwin, to join our committee, and Mr. Cronin has withdrawn, from what I understand from Matt, his membership. Timothy, would you like to speak to your candidacy? Glad to have you on board, man. Glad to have you on board. Okay. I presume we're not going to need a motion to remove Timothy Cronin. And if we do, then we can do that. Otherwise, I need a motion to appoint Timothy Goodwin, member 2-year term, to the Cable TV Advisory Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Mr. Sullivan?
Aye.
Dave Senical,
Yes.
Linda Murray,
Yes.
Paul O'Brien,
Yes.
and Bowers.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
just for the public's benefit and knowledge, we just went through some committee assignments. The Wolfeboro Waters Committee has, I think we have one member and one alternate position remaining open. Is that correct, Linda? I think we do.
Well, Amy forgot to put Kathy Barnard on the list, and Kathy will be on next week's or next meeting agenda to be appointed.
So is Kathy going to sign up as a full-time committee member, not an alternate?
She already had, she sent it the letter. It was just an error. It didn't get on. And she's I think for a 3-year term.
Okay, all right. So then we still have one alternate left on the Wolfeboro Waters Committee, if I understand correctly. We'll deal with Ms. Barnard's candidacy next week. And on EDC, I think we have still open a 1 2-year spot and 1 3-year spot and 1 alternate spot on the EDC. So members of the public, if you're interested in the economic development activities of our town, you're encouraged to sign up. And on the Cable TV Advisory Committee, given that Mr. Cronin has withdrawn his membership, we have one membership opportunity for anyone in the public there. That's just FYI for the folks out there in TV land. Okay, new business. we have an approval for commercial vessel landing permit, mailboat, dive Winnipesaukee commercial permit. My machine's talking to me here. So we have the commercial vessel landing permit for the mailboat, dive Winnipesaukee. Is anyone here from the mailboat or dive Winnipesaukee who wants to speak to this? Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing for any comments from the public. No comments from the public. Members of the Board of Selectmen, commentary.
Yes, we had a note on our notes that he's going to follow all the governor's orders.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, a motion, please, to accept or approve the commercial vessel landing permit for mailboat dive Winnipesaukee.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Sullivan, roll call, please.
Dave Senical,
Yes.
Linda Murray,
Yes.
Paul O'Brien,
Yes, sir.
and Dave Bowers.
Yes.
Okay.
Unanimous.
Next one is a license agreement for Wolfeboro Jet Ski Rentals. And I presume we have Mr. Drew in here to speak to that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Nate, no.
We've been there for the last at least 6 years. I did want to just address the comment from Ms. Ryan. I believe we have been paying the town a license fee for the past for the entire time we've been there. And the current proposed agreement is includes a license fee of $500 per year. Thank you.
Paul? Paul, your mic's not on. Paul, your mic's not on.
Linda. And Nate, I also understand that you're going to comply with all COVID-19 rules put out by the...
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Oh, can I make a comment on this one?
You may.
Okay. This has been, I think, a win-win for this community. 6 years ago, these two young men, and I think it was this person who spoke's brother, started this jet ski. We worked to try to find them a dock. We were able to rent them, or they're the side of the dock closest to Bradley's. This is a license agreement, not a lease, and I confirm what he told you, that they have paid the $500 every year that they've had that dock. I think it's a win-win. I think it shows how the community, the chamber, and the board work together to make this happen, and I think it's a plus to our community to have jet skis for rent in the downtown.
And I may be incorrect, but don't we have the same type of fee structure for other vessels that land on Wolfeboro docks?
Well, those are landing permit. We've done a lease agreement also with the farmers market when they use Clark Park. So that's what this is. This is a license agreement opposed to a lease.
Okay. All right, I'll open this up for questions from the public. Suzanne, we have your questions noted. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I appreciate the clarification. I'm just looking at an older agreement, and it had no dollar figure in there. So I am presuming then with what you're about to sign this year, you've put some sort of dollar figure in.
I think you just heard that from the applicant.
On the one we're going to sign tonight, number 4, consideration fees, $500.
Fine. Looks like you've updated the document. That's great.
Thanks for the catch, Suzanne. We appreciate it. Okay, anybody else from the public? Hearing none, members, questions? And let's get
I'll
a
make a
motion.
motion. I'll make a
Yep.
motion. We approve Wolfeboro jet ski rentals
I'll
as
second that.
proposed.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Roll call vote, Mr. Sullivan, please.
Dave Senical? Dave Senical?
Yes.
Linda Murray?
Yes.
Paul O'Brien?
Yes.
And Dave Bowers?
Yes.
Okay. The next is a discussion. Thank you, everybody. The next is a discussion on the update on the Lakes Region Model Railroad Museum, Inc. Mr. Sims has requested time in the agenda to provide an update on his project. So, Mr. Sims, we're going to mute our mics and give you the floor.
Thank you, sir. Can you hear me properly? My name is John Sims. I am president of the Lakes Region Model Railroad Museum, Incorporated. And this report refers to the freight shed rehabilitation project proposed by the museum. The location of the project is TAPS map 217-046, otherwise known as 61 Railroad Avenue in Wolfeboro. We are ready to begin the rehabilitation project. The work statement for the project was prepared last year with each step specified and photographed. This is the source document for the LCHIP funding. The current plan is to start preparing bid packages this weekend within 6 to 8 weeks' time. We prepared site plans showing the current and proposed conditions and submitted them as part of our applications to the ZBA and planning boards. However, our applications were considered incomplete since they lacked specific permission from the building's owner to submit them. Normally, this would require a simple letter from the owner of the building, permission for the applications. The aspect here is that the town is the owner, and the letter of permission must come from you, the Board of Selectmen. While I'm very happy to address any issues, and I would like to do that, I have to bring you up to date on any aspect that you are interested in. This specific request is for a simple permission to submit the applications to the ZBA and the Planning Board, and to begin the process of review by their respective boards. So I'm asking you that you vote to give us this permission, and I provided to the town manager a copy of some language I am suggesting. Would you like me to read that language out?
Free to do so, as long as it's brief. If you want to summarize the language, that would be good.
No, it's short. I'm asking you to make a resolution as follows. Board of Selectmen acting on behalf of the town of Wolfeboro, owner of the Wolfeboro Freight Shed and the lot on which it sits, and I give the tax map reference, gives its permission to the Lakes Region Model Railroad Museum, Inc. to submit its applications to the Wolfeboro Board of Zoning Appeal and to the Wolfeboro Planning Board for the project to rehabilitate the freight shed and construct inside a model railroad museum. And if you would be willing to entertain that, then this will allow us to move forward. The meat of the applications can then be reviewed by the ZBA and the Planning Board, as would normally be done. Before you deliberate, I would like to read 2 sentences from the master plan, which are very important in motivating us to push this project forward. The first says, the first recommendation is to
John, we've lost you. We can't hear you at all.
Mr. Sims has gone to flag.
support, educate, compliant, possible. to encourage new investment in the rehabilitation of significant historic structures. The second recommendation is utilize own historic properties and invest in have been important for us as indicating the direction. So I'm able to request a specific request of you. So I'm not sure how you would like to proceed, Mr. Chairman.
John, thanks for doing that. Unfortunately, during the time that you began to read your first part of the master plan, you kind of went off the air here for a second. So could you read that sentence back to us one more time for the benefit of all of us?
Yes, the first recommendation in the master plan is to support, educate, and empower town professionals to grant code compliance relief whenever possible, to encourage new investment in the rehabilitation of significant historic structures. And the second recommendation is to find new uses for vacant and underutilized town-owned historic properties and invest in their rehabilitation.
Yeah, thank you, John. I appreciate that. I'd like everybody here at the board to chime in. But maybe just to frame the conversation, if I might take a minute. You know, over the past several days, there's been a lot of back and forth, what I would call ping pong here. I think I hear, and I might be wrong, but let me just kind of tee it up this way. I think I hear four kind of categories of information that are needed. First is we have to change zoning in this area of town to allow for a museum to operate. If I could just finish. Could you mute your mic, John, please? Thank you. So we have to change zoning, and that's something that the ZBA, that's okay, that's something that the ZBA has to weigh in on. Mr. Sullivan, is there anything else that the ZBA needs to weigh in on?
I get this. I lost it.
It's actually Dave Bowers' mic that's going. The ZBA is being asked to weigh in on, and just to back up a little bit, on a special exception within the zoning. A special exception functionally is a permitted use within a zoning district, provided that special criteria are met. In the case of Wolfeboro, there are 8 criteria that are required to be met, involving really the appropriateness of the use within a specific area. Without going into the details of those 8 criteria, functionally what the ZBA are deciding is the use appropriate in the location that's been identified? That is what they're dealing with only.
So if I get this correctly, several warrant articles and things of that nature, you know, and I'm not sure what the 8 criteria are, but that's bucket number 1. ZBA needs to determine the appropriateness of the use. Bucket number 2, I think there's been an outstanding ask of Mr. Sims by members of this board, and I think by our town manager, for kind of a sequence of events. It's a timeline as to what's going to get done when. That's bucket number 2. And the reason we want that second bucket is, you know, Dave Ford is going to be telling us what he needs to do to lay out a road, and we want to make sure that he's in sync with your plans and you're in sync with his plans, so we don't lay out a road and then have somebody start doing construction work. Could I ask people who are not speaking to mute their microphones? Number 3 is, what are you going to do with the outside of the building? And I think there's a plan in place. And then what are you going to do with the inside of the building? And I don't think we've seen that. Now, if I'm missing something, and I'll let the rest of the board speak to that. Those are the 4 things that come to my mind. Those are the 4 buckets that we need to, I think, address. If I've missed anything, board members, I'll park it there and let you all talk about it.
My feeling is that the voters of this town voted to put the $95,000 in the capital reserve by 72%, and they also approved in 2012 a lease that we're to lease it to the museum for $1, 10 years with a renewal of another 10, and that was 82%. So it's clear that that we need to make this happen. Any project needs to go through the ZBA. That is not anything that this board should be dealing with. My understanding is they've got an LCHIP grant. That LCHIP grant is going to meet some historical requirements. And we should get a letter from LCHIP that they agree that the plans that the museum submit meet the LCHIP requirements. Other than that, I think it's between the museum and the LCHIP to make sure that they are within a historical renovation in order to get the funds. I agree with you, Paul. We need a timeline. We need to know when you think you're going to do that, so Dave Ford can make sure that we can be coordinated, and when you're ready to open, we have our road ready to go. So that's where I am.
Other members, please.
I think in the past we've asked for a timeline and stuff. I don't know that we have seen it yet.
Well, I think we need to get this thing going. We need to get into the ZBA and the planning board, and it's important that they keep on track to get that LCHIP grant.
Chairman, may I respond to some of the issues?
I'd like to, yeah, John, do that. But, you know, when you respond to the timeline question, because I know that's one that I've asked you for, and I know that I've seen emails on it. I guess my direct question to you, and see if you can answer it, is could you have one like next week?
Probably in 2 weeks' time. We need to coordinate with Dave Ford. We have our own internal timeline, which applies in the event that there is no change because of the working together with Dave Ford. But we can certainly get something together within 2 weeks. Would you like me to address the other issues?
Well, let me just poke at you for this one. If we said, no, we don't need you to coordinate with Dave Ford, we want you to lay out what you need, and we'll do our best to interleave. Could you have a timeline next week?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Then I would suggest you do that.
I will.
Okay. We're going to meet on the 13th, I think, Mr. Town Manager.
Yeah, I am recommending that the Board of Selectmen meet on the 13th as the trustees of the Libby to decide what we're going to do with the Libby for the summer of 2020. And I don't see any reason why at that meeting we can have this topic discussed.
Okay. And yeah, please, John, I'm sorry to pin you down. I kind of second with Linda, and I think with all of us, we want this to be a successful project. We want to get going. And anything we can do to move off just talking about it, move into action is kind of where we all want to go. So please respond to the other issues.
Very well. There's no change of zoning. It is required for the museum. My understanding is that it is permitted by special exemption in the downtown business. So the special exemption hearing needs to be satisfied at the ZBA, and I think that is their primary concern. The timeline, I have been waiting to see if we have a project yet. And so far we do not, because we haven't even applied to the ZBA and the planning board. And what we're suggesting is a further delay. Photographic narrative of everything that is going to be done to the building to rehabilitate it. Linda is correct in that the definition of what we are doing for the rehabilitation has to meet LCHIP standards. And that is, we have been talking to them for the last 3 years about getting what we want to do and acceptable to them. With respect to the timeline, we have timelines already in existence. We just have not had it on a Gantt chart. We can do that. And I'm going to ask you to please give us the permission to go ahead to the ZBA, because if we don't get it done today, we miss the 20-day countdown, and we'll be moved into July. And that, to my mind, is not to be preferred for a variety of reasons. So we want to make the June ZBA and planning board meetings. And to do that, if I'm right, Matt, we need to have the packages submitted before your next Board of Selectmen meeting.
John, that's
Board
correct.
members,
On the ZBA, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm
No, go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
You're correct on the ZBA. That does need to be submitted in order to allow us to do the proper 10 days notice. The planning board, we have a bit more flexibility around because the planning board actually continued your application rather than actually, not acting on it. So you have a little more flexibility there, but I think we should be pushing for the same timelines for both projects.
So
Yes,
unless I misunderstand, John, you've signed up to get us a timeline. I know that you'd like to work with Mr. Ford, but you know what? Let's just get something on paper that we can, I hate to use the word, throw darts at. Let's just do that so that we can get something going. And you're kind of signed up to get that into us by next week. That would be great. On the ZBA, if I understand, it's a change of use situation. Board members, or Matt Sullivan, is there anything that the Board of Selectmen should or should not do other than just say, yeah, go ahead and go to the ZBA? Is there anything you recommend that we should do to kind of help move that along?
I'm happy to respond, Mr. Chairman. I believe that the applicant has submitted a complete application to the zoning board. Like any application involving both zoning and planning board, the applications are very reliant upon each other in the sense that zoning application requires that traffic be addressed, that pedestrian safety be addressed. But I see no reason why the board should be hesitant about authorizing that application. It really is simply for the use approval. When it comes to the site plan review application, which I think you'll talk about too, that's a little more dependent upon how the town's layout project and how the railroad station project itself actually work together. But from the zoning board perspective, I think that's ready to be authorized and submitted.
Well, I agree with Matt. I think we're ready to go. We've got a warrant article of the voters saying, rent it to them, use it for a museum. We're just okaying them to take our bid on the building, and we're okaying them to move forward, even though we're the owner, to go through with what the voters have already approved to take place. And that is to rent it to them.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
I understand that, but they want us to move that forward with them.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Linda. I think my question was, does this board want to just say, sure, go ahead and do your application, or do we want to say, listen, we support this project to the point that we think change of use is appropriate. We're working aggressively with the applicant to make sure that how the outside of the building and the inside of the building work together, but please go you forth and do what you need to do. Or do you just want to just let the applicant go to the ZBA?
I just send the applicant to the ZBA, and knowing that the L-chip grant is going to dictate, the exterior of the building, which is what we're concerned about, how it looks down there.
Okay, so
and we
the
still have to do the
timeline.
lease. We don't have a lease. We don't have a draft.
No, I think that's right. That's right. I think all of these things all inform the lease document. So the timeline, John, you're signed up for next week. Thank you for that. Any objection to this board? We probably need a motion to move it over to the ZBA. Can I get a motion to do that?
Is it a motion to the ZBA or a motion to allow the Lakes Region Model Railroad to move forward with this project through our planning process of the town? That's what I thought.
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
I think the motion should ultimately be a motion to authorize the Lakes Region Model Railroad Museum to submit an application for a special exception to the Zoning Board of Adjustment and a site plan review application to the Planning Board for their consideration.
I'll move that.
I'll second that, Dave.
Okay.
I was going to have Linda move it and Dave say, what the heck? So you got a movement and you got a second. Conversation among the board members. Anything else? Mr. Bowers, I know you're out there. I can hear you.
I agree with it. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I agree with it.
Hi. Motion's on the table. We have a second. Any other discussion? Let's call the vote. Mr. Sullivan.
Dave Senical,
Yes.
Linda Murray. Linda, I didn't hear you.
Turn on your microphone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Stop
Paul
there.
O'Brien
Yes.
and Dave Bowers.
Yes.
Okay. And so items 3 and 4 in my little fragile list, which is what do we need to know about the outside of the building? I believe we have some clarity on that. What are we going to do on the inside of the building? And John, I'm speaking directly to you, and maybe you could address this. I don't know whether you're restoring the inside of the building, repairing the inside of the building. I just don't know. And let me be very candid and open as I try to be. I don't know whether 2 or 3 years from now, if you're just repairing the inside of the building, I don't know what happens 2 or 3 years from now if the floor falls apart, if the pilings underneath aren't restored. I don't know how we deal with all of that, and that's been my issue. I don't know if it's anybody else's issue, but I want to make sure that we spend the right money with you because the voters have said do that. But I want to make sure that we don't come back and find that we have to spend another tranche of money, or you have to close down because something broke. So how do we get more clarity around that?
The definition of the restoration project is to return the building to its condition as it was in 1872. All weak things will be replaced by strong things. Any deterioration will be repaired. It's a restoration back to a condition that should last for another 140 years. It is not a patchwork project. It is a very thorough replacement of all questionable materials with modern equivalents, or the old equivalent if code will allow. But for instance, we don't use creosoted logs anymore. So the piers on which it stands will all be examined. Those that are weak will be replaced. Those that are rotating will be replaced. All rotten wood will be taken out and repaired. It'll be a complete reconstruction of the building to the extent necessary to satisfy the LCHIP requirements. They're not in the business of a 3-year patch job. They want what they put their money in to last for a long time.
And if I may, one last question. Well, it kind of does. Matt, how does those ambitions, which are really good, translate into something that is written down on a piece of paper that we can put in a file and have for a record?
Well, ultimately, the applicant will have to go through the building permitting process, which is one thing that I want to really distinguish from the site plan and the zoning board processes. And as part of that building permit process, they'll be required to submit plans that are prepared by at least a design professional under state law. I do know that Mr. Sims's accessibility plan for ADA access is prepared by such an individual, and the drawings will ultimately have to be done in the same vein. It does depend in this case, I think, to some extent, who is managing the project. I believe Brian Lombard is likely the individual who will be managing the project on this. Mr. Lombard is, to my understanding, is a professional engineer, and therefore there's a certain standard of integrity that he'll be held to. And there are certain elements that he may or may not be comfortable making decisions upon. So I guess the short answer is we'll be requiring a full set of building plans. They'll be reviewed in the same way that a normal building permit application would be. And ultimately, those will have to be prepared by a design professional.
And do you have a full set of building plans now?
Is that a question of me, Paul? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is.
No, I do not have a full set of building plans as of this time.
And John, you're on your timeline that we're gonna go through here somewhere, and I know there's probably some contingencies you're thinking about. We really can't give you a permit until we have building plans, and so that's got to be kind of specced out on your timeline.
Correct. We need to define what is meant by building plans and to what degree do we need to go. For instance, the rafters need to be repaired internally and brought back to the condition they were and the appearance they were in originally, and that will be done with by a structural engineer.
Well, again, I'm not Matt Sullivan, but it would seem to me if you have a PE, a professional engineer working for you, that person pretty well knows what a building plan needs to be and needs to look like.
Correct.
So, okay, all right. I'm sorry, board members, I just have kind of occupying the time here. Questions from Linda, Dave, anybody for Mr. Sims on the building plan stuff?
Mr. Chairman, can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
So, John Sims and I have talked, and one of the things, just so you're aware, it being a town building, when we started this project, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, started talking about it, the assumption was if we're going to rehabilitate it, we're going to have to bring water and sewer and fix the drainage. We already started with the drainage. We have a plan for the road layout, which I believe we'll be speaking about in a later Board of Selectmen meeting. I think we're going to go through that process to lay the road out and get it paved. But it would make sense that the town would supply the water and the sewer services to the building, and that was the plan that we had talked about. Although I don't think it was ever discussed with the selectmen or even at the town manager level. So I think one of the things John is assuming in his project cost that the town would supply the water sewer services, and that is something we had discussed. But I just wanted to make sure that this board was aware of that, and that wasn't a cost that we were going to pass on to the.
Okay.
Well,
So Linda, you had raised your hand. Go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, I remember at a board meeting us talking about doing the water and sewer day.
Yeah.
That we were going to do that part to the building.
Yeah. Well, and again, this is just my 2 cents. So let's assume just for the heck of it that happens. You know, there is going to be a cost to, shovel in the ground. And as I said to Mr. Pinia, buying the pipes and all of that, that cost is probably going to be it's a direct cost. It's going to be a cost to the town. And I think it's contemplated that inside that $95,000 we have, that's probably where the cost is going to get recovered. Because somehow we have to recover a cost, not a revenue, but a cost.
No,
So,
I don't think that 95 is to go against the building. My understanding that we would absorb it, it's going to come out of the water budget and the sewer budget. And Dave will find somewheres in there, not maybe do something else if he didn't put it in his budget. It's going to come out of the operating budget.
Well, wherever it comes from, the cost is going to be identified and a budget line item is going to have to get tagged. I'll just park it there. So I think we're in agreement that there's going to be a cost. It's going to have to get paid for.
Mr. Chairman, shall I address the issues that Suzanne Ryan brought up?
Yes, please.
She mentioned assuring the taxpayers that the capital reserve will not be paid out in front before the work is done. The warrant article says that the capital reserve will be paid pro rata along with the LCHIP grant and the private funds, and it'll be paid by the town directly to contractors whose invoices have been signed off by the project manager. And so the idea is that the town is never further into the project than LCHIP or the private investors. By the time the work is all done, everybody will be fully spent, but at no point will anybody be carrying a proportionately larger burden than anybody else. And so, and certifying that we have the funds is a step that I'm ready to take in a formal fashion, both to LCHIP and to the town, to the finance director of the town, when we have the project pulled together, when we got the approvals, when we know what the conditions are, when we know what the details are, then we can say this confirms the $380,000 total cost of the phase one, and we're ready to do those certifications anytime. You saw the financials that I prepared for you, which show that we have enough private funding to complete the 380, and we have a further $50,000 cushion beyond that. So that the town is not at risk for any money, for any funds. If there is an overrun, LCHIP is at risk for that. The town's total exposure to for the rehabilitation project is the 95,000 in the capital reserve, period.
Board members, the next question on the table is, okay, so we've seen a document. I think it came over last Friday, like 3:30 in the afternoon, that was a proposed contract. How do we want to deal with the business terms? Forget, no disrespect to lawyers, there might be some lawyers here in the audience. How do we want to deal with the business terms of this contract, the business relationship between us and Mr. Sims and his team, and then we'll get the lawyers to paper it up and make it all legal? How do we do that? Linda?
Well, I'm not quite sure. We do it through the lease. And then if we feel like we want in writing, and I think that was part of that warrant article, exactly how the payments were going to go, would be mine. It's going to be the conditions of the lease, and if not, then we have to put, if there are other conditions, we're going to have to get some kind of a document. You know, and I just, while you were talking and you were saying, I just pulled out of my file in August 21st, and I believe it's this year, Mr. Sims came in with a package, and there were pictures of areas that they were going to repair. So I think that we've gotten that. I've just pulled it out right now. I think we have to work on the lease. We've got to decide what we want in that lease, what are the terms. One of the things when I was reading, it says that they will try to raise, you know, we will have to define that they have in hand X amount of money and all that. And that should be in the lease, I believe.
Well, I don't want to put people on the spot. Jim, how do you want this to work? Mr. Penio.
Thank you, Paul. Last Friday afternoon, I received a version of a lease from Mr. Sims. Back on, I believe it was February 12th, I had met with a couple Board of Selectmen members and discussed some of the criterias of a potential lease between the town of Wolfeboro and the museum. I don't think the terms of Mr. Sims' lease proposal is a long ways off from what the board members that I spoke with are looking for. So I think we need to schedule a time with Mr. Sims to iron out those issues regarding the lease.
You want to do that by yourself? You need some help? What do you need?
Yeah, it would be awfully nice to have a Board of Selectmen member to be able to work with in this type of a format here with Mr. Sims, so that we could get through to the point where we know what the operation of the museum, the building, and what the expectations from all parties are in advance. I think we've been asking for that for a period of time, and I think we're getting close to that.
Okay.
The item that I think we've really got to get, and this is stewardship of that $95,000. We need to have that chart that lays out a rough idea how that $95,000 is coming out of the town's capital reserve fund and being used to pay bills. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the Board of Selectmen are agents to expend that money. So all of those purchase orders for that work is going to have to come through this forum to you for approval. I think you expressed that you would like to see.
Penio said he probably could use some help. Comments from the board?
I think it makes sense. I can either work with them, or I'm more than willing to send them the questions if somebody else wants to work with them. I'm comfortable either way. But if
Yeah, my
nobody else
personal-
wants to, I'm more than willing to work.
You know, Linda, and board members, my personal view on this, and I think we all agree, so it's not just me. We want this project to be successful. The voters have told us, they told us in like thumping at us to make it successful. I think we probably had kind of a little bit of a swirl here, and it's probably just the getting going phase, which organizations tend to have. But now we got to sit down, we got to figure out who pays for what, how it gets done, what's the timeline, what are the terms and conditions of the business agreement, and then the lawyers can figure out how to make that work. And I think Jim is saying, I need help. And I'd like to just get a couple more board members' input before we draw this thing to some kind of a close. Anybody else? Mr. Senecal, I just saw your light go on.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with getting together as well, depending on what the time frame is.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, I'd be glad to. I would like to look at the timeline he has, you know, and those kinds of things, so that I can look at it. I haven't been in the building for quite a while. I would personally like to get down and look inside the building, John, at some point again. The outside can be easily looked at, but I know that a couple of years ago there was some concern in reference to the piers underneath, and it seems like you've addressed some of that. I heard, David, did you also look at that underneath there? You guys went in and did some drainage and stuff, right? Dave Ford?
Yes, we have done a lot of work on the drainage. And again, there's a lot to that building. So it's not, if you want to really see it, you got to get underneath it. He's got pictures. I think Mr. Lombardi has done a lot of work in assessing all the different piers. But John, it is not 100% replacement of the foundation, right? We're going to go look and make sure it's something that's good. You're going to keep it? John Sims? I guess he's not. Okay, in any case, I think there's, again, you can go look at the building, but it's a 150-year-old building. It doesn't look in too good a shape. So.
Mr. Bowers, please mute your microphone. So I guess somebody needs to get a mask and slippers and go underneath the building and take a look. Who's up for doing that? Mr. Senecal, I still see your mic on. You up for going under the building and looking at this stuff?
Well, I'd like to see the information he has, obviously. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't do much crawling anymore, so, you know, I'm probably not going to do that, but I will go around the building and look at it and go to the inside. I would do that.
Okay. All right, board members, where do we want to go from here? I think Jim is saying he needs help. I think I've seen 2 hands go up in the air. How do you want to settle this?
I'd be glad to meet anytime. Linda, I mean, you know, both of us, we can certainly
sure.
Well,
work together on that.
Hear what we said. I haven't been able to hear most of what has been said in the last 5 minutes, but I have extensive photograph gallery of all of the details underneath the building. I'm very happy to share that with you or whoever you wish.
I would like to see that.
So we have, right now, we have two members of our board that are in concert raising hands and saying they'd like to help and kind of put some structure around what I think is the next thing, which is moving us towards a contract. The business terms towards a contract. So Dave and Linda, are you guys okay with this?
I'm fine with it.
Mr. Senecal?
Yes.
Mr. Penny, are you okay with that? You can't say no, they just said they'd do it.
I think this will work out actually better now that we've got 2 board members who will be working alongside myself and Mr. Sims to see what the project's going to look like and to be able to get the terms done. Thank you very much.
Sims, are you okay with that? Mr. Sims, are you all right with having a couple of our select people?
I think so. I'm not like I said, I only heard about a quarter of what was said, but I'll meet with the town manager and work it out. The thrust of what I heard certainly sounds the right way to go.
I think the thrust of what you heard is rather than having all of us come together and listening to things, we want to kind of peel off a couple of our experts. Mr. Senecal being an expert in buildings and code enforcement, and Linda being a pretty good expert at, as I fondly say, that getting into the gritty nitties on things that got to get done. I think those two people will help us all when you get this thing going for you. You okay with that?
Very much, I agree.
Okay. Mr. Sims, you always say some kind of a timeline next week. You okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. And Matt, I don't know if we need a motion to move this over to the ZBA, but I think I hear a consensus of the board saying let it fly.
I think we already voted on moving the applications, both applications, to the board. So I think that I have what I need to proceed with those.
Let it fly. Okay. Any other questions or comments on this particular topic? For the benefit of Suzanne, Ryan, we all have seen, you haven't, but we have seen, it just came in the other day, a bank account statement which details how much money is in the bank, like really live dollars in the bank. And so we're continuing to ask John to keep us posted and updated on any incremental funding. It does appear from what we see and what we know about the LCHIP dollars and the $95,000 that if his project is sized up, and I think, John, your number was $380,000. I think that was the number.
Yes.
Yes, just above your head. Yeah. I think he's got the liquidity he needs, although it's squeaky tight. He claims he's got some cushion, and I know he's going to continue to fundraise above that cushion. So unless there's anything else, I'd like to, with the okay of the board, I'd like to move to the next item on the agenda. John, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your help and support.
Great pleasure. Thank you, sir. Item D on our minutes, our agenda is a finance discussion. Mr. Pinio?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Requesting to be able to table the financial report. The finance director is unavailable.
Any objection? Okay. We'll table it till our next regularly scheduled meeting or sooner if we can. Item E, it's called warrant article funding, and it's Mr. Pinio's note to us. Just for everybody, I think there's 3 items out there that we're all interested in knowing about. We've been asked about shovel-ready projects. We've been asked about projects that could be at risk should there be any capital rationing by the state. And although not a part of this conversation, there is an ask from Pat Tarpey about any projects relating to water quality, which might be eligible for some reimbursements as well. But the first 2, shovel-ready and CapEx projects, Jim, I'm going to leave it to you. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, this is very much a moving target every day. One of the items that myself, Mr. Sullivan, and Mr. Ford sat down and discussed, we've obviously got a concern over the next few months regarding revenues from taxation. So we felt it necessary to be able to look at the 2020 warrant articles and see where we may be able to hold off a little bit to see what our tax revenues actually look like. One of the things that has been identified, capital reserve appropriations, those have to go into those accounts by December 15th by statute. So those monies at this point are untouchable. That led us to look at some other projects, specific warrant articles where we may be able to hold off on money. These are projects that are multi-year projects, and we felt that we could hold off on these until such time that we know what tax revenues for the June tax bill look like. So what we're proposing right now is to put on hold the public safety building engineering, the electric generation feasibility study, the recreational dock repairs, the water quality improvements, and town road upgrades phase 2. That's a total of $875,000 that we'll be able to hold off on any expenses. Within there, we've got a couple of projects which we have got some concerns about relative to potential state and or federal funds. Those being the recreational dock repairs, the water quality improvements, and further the RIB effluent disposal site. You should have as well received a spreadsheet with my memo outlining some of the projects, funding types, and with that stated, myself, Mr. Sullivan, or Mr. Ford should be able to answer any questions that you may have for us.
Questions from my colleagues?
I think it's a good report. It shows us where we can go if we're short funds. If the money comes in, we can spend it. I like the fact that we have a list of shovel-ready projects if there's some federal infrastructure grants. So, job well done in my mind.
You're talking about this piece of paper, Linda?
That's correct.
Yep, I agree.
Let's get that on the minutes so that people can see it. So just as an action item, we got to make sure that Mr. McDonald and probably Jeb Bradley get some type of a writing from us sooner, like this week, that says, you asked for it, here it is. So that would, and maybe just CC Representative Damaris so that the delegation is aware of that, because I'm sure they're all going to be dealing with this in their own circles. Mr. Ford, anything from you about this? I know there's probably some things here that you want to tell us.
Yes, I think in line with the concept of let's be ready in case the stimulus money comes, but let's also be cautious in case the revenues don't come. So we are going forward with our engineering on the Cary Beach project. We just get that contract ready, and that's going to be ready to go out to bid. So that'll be one of the shovel-ready projects, even though we have authorization for the full funding. If we can get some stimulus money for that, and that would qualify under water quality projects. The RIB project, we are moving forward with last year's authorization and getting all the permits and construction documents. That's slowed down a little bit because of the national emergency and we have to get in front of Tuftonboro, but we still think we'll be ready for that by the end of this year. And we're also working on a project, the High Street and Park Street, which is engineering, and that's going to be a costly rebuild project. It's kind of like a Pine Street. We need to do water, sewer, and drainage, and that might be a project that might qualify also for stimulus money because it has a sewer, water, and drainage in it. The one that's a little tricky is the recreational dock project, and that one will probably come to the board at the next meeting or meeting after to get into the details there. We appropriated $170,000, and we were hoping to get a match on a grant from the boat infrastructure grants, and we've been back and forth with the coordinator there, and that may or may not go this year. So we'll be back once we get some more information in the next week or two about that project. But that one might go on hold or might have to go to next year. The town road upgrades, what we authorized, or we have appropriations of $850,000. What Jim and I had talked about was, let's go forward with the overlay work that's planned, and that's already in the queue. So North Wolfeboro Road gets overlaid, and other overlay projects. So that's a small amount, and we'll start working on the drainage and getting ready. But the two big projects, which will be Bryant Road and Allen Road, will wait until July 1st. And if everything looks good with revenues, then we'll issue the contract at that point. We have everything lined up, ready to go. So we're in the queue, so it won't delay us too much. We'll be working on drainage work ahead of time. So if things look good, we can go. If not, we can put that project on hold and save $500,000.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
David, you just mentioned overlays. Is that Pine Street and Lena Street as well?
Yes, it is. Yep, that's going to be under the lineman contract. I'll be overlaying Pine Street and the sidewalk. That should occur hopefully in the next few weeks. And Main Street, we're going to grind out and then inlay back. So that's also included with the overlay work. Yep, that's committed dollars in that first phase. That say 325 is going to be committed and spent.
Okay.
We're going to hold back on the 525.
So you cut out a little bit. The grind and resurface is going to be Lerner Street.
Yes.
And that starts when do you think? When do you think that starts?
We're hopeful that's going to start within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Mr. Sullivan, do you have something?
Dave, just so that that project on Laner Street is only the first 400 feet, correct? From
Right.
Laner Street, Center Street intersection. It's not the full length of Laner Street.
Correct. It's the piece that's left from the Downtown Street project and the Center Street project. Is about 300 or 400 feet in the middle there by the restaurant and these restaurants. Yep.
That's where they had that big hunk of metal. It was,
Yeah,
they
the
had
big.
parked it there for a while. Yep. Matt Sullivan, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to add one quick comment on the 2020 water quality projects line item that is identified as a potential at-risk project simply because we were unsure about the status of the EPA, the 319 water quality monies, the Clean Water Act monies. I actually just received notification today that it was item number 118 on the governor and council agenda today, and it actually likely was signed. So that at-risk note there may not be at risk at all. So that might come off of our list for funding, or for funding risk, sorry.
Okay. Mr. Pinio, any other board members, any comments before we move forward?
Mr. Chairman, I want clarification. Do you want me to just draft a letter to those representatives, or do you want those representatives in attendance at the May 20th Board of Selectmen's meeting, which was discussed at one point?
Yeah, that's a good question. One part of me says, give them the letter and ask them what they can do, and then invite them in. Another part of me says, just give them the letter. Board members, it's at your pleasure. What do you think we should do?
I think a letter would work as far as I'm concerned.
Linda?
Yeah, I would go with a letter, get it out, and then after we get a response from the letter, if we have things we feel we need to talk to them, bring them in then.
Yeah, Jim, I'm kind of in the same space. Unrelated to these capital projects, there's it's a terrible acronym, GOFER, but nonetheless, there's a gopher out there. There's some gopher money, and buried inside of this gopher thing is some conversation about broadband. And so I've been kind of thumping at a few of our colleagues there and the state delegation saying, hey, don't forget about Carroll County. And they're all like nodding their heads saying, yeah, we'll do that. I'd much rather have them come back to us when they have something that says we can actually help. So maybe we just get them the letter, tell them thank you very much, here it is. And I know John McDonald has been asking a couple of times for it. So why don't we just get the letter out under your signature and let's see where it goes.
Okay, I'll get the letter out and I'll await response from them. And if they're interested in attending a board meeting, we'll absolutely invite them. Thank you.
Yeah, I think when they may say, hey, I want to get on the agenda. I got something to tell you. That would be awesome. Okay. Any other questions, comments about this particular agenda item? Okay. Next one is the resurfacing of New Hampshire Route 28, crosswalk, mumble strips, blinking lights. And Mr. Ford, it's all yours.
Thank you. As you recall, the state was nice enough to come visit us, and we had a nice public meeting with the public invited to talk about rumble strips and crosswalks. Unfortunately, we had brought up a lot of issues and to the state, and I guess they got busy or we didn't chase them hard enough, but they issued the 2 contracts for overlays, which are the Center Street, which is from the Wright Museum out to the Ossipee Town line. Yep. And the second contract is from Pickering Corner out to Alton. Continental Paving's got both of the contracts, and then working with DOT. I was notified about 2 weeks ago that they were going to start doing that work, and that's when I called and kind of pushed some of the DOT. Hey, you never got back to us. So we did get a letter from Mr. Bill Cass, the Assistant Commissioner. And unfortunately, they had intended on getting back to us. Basically, what the letter says is that issues, there were 3 crosswalks at Wolfeboro Falls. They want to eliminate 2 of them. We asked to eliminate none of them. They decided to take out 1 and leave the crosswalk at the Bridge Falls Pathway and the crosswalk at the Wright Museum. But the crosswalk at Linda's Flowers is now not going to be restriped after they do the overlay, and they did not put in the ADA bubble ramp that they've done everywhere else in town. They did not require us to put in an RRFB, but they kept that as, okay, we'll talk about that later, and the rapid flashing beacon at the crosswalk locations, which they're still pushing for, but they didn't mandate it at this time. The last paragraph also, they talked about the rumble strips, and if you remember, we had a big discussion, and they are to put it back in after the overlay, but they're going to be the mumble strips. So we've heard that these are less noisy, less vibration, and hopefully there won't be as much disturbance for the public. They did say they would take in notes at our meeting and would be more careful in the layout of those rumble strips, so we'll see how that works out. So I guess that just summarizes the letter, and again, it's just one of those, you know, we really, if you don't hear anything, we have to chase them. If you don't chase them, then they're going to make their own decisions, which is they did. So again, I have been out there working people in the field, trying to make the best we can of these areas. But there's this project is probably going to go forward within the next couple of weeks. You can see they're working on the crosswalks. They got to raise the drainage structures, and then they'll be doing the overlays probably within the next month. If anyone's had any questions. Can you hear me?
Oh, Paul's audio is down for a second there.
Back. Did everyone else hear me? Was I talking to myself?
No, I can
Nope,
hear.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Doing great.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Oh, Dave Bowers is here. Hey, Dave.
Hi, Dad.
Your picture's back. Look at you. Oh, well.
You can't make this stuff up, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions for my my colleague, Mr. Ford?
Nope.
Jim, anything? Matt, Dave, any comments further?
Nope.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Ford. The next topic on our agenda is the beach policy. Public hearing for beach policy. Who's leading us off here? Mr. Sullivan or Christine or whom?
Christine is going to leave, but this is not the public hearing this evening. The public hearing will be scheduled for this is just a discussion of the public hearing, just for clarification. Sorry about that.
My bad. I'm still learning how to be chairman. Sorry about that. Yeah, public hearing schedule needs to be set up. So beach policy, we're going to have a discussion tonight. Who's doing it?
Christine's going to take the beginning.
PC, it's on you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. So in front of you, you should have beach proposal rules. I think tonight we're going over, we had made the changes per request the last Selectmen's meeting with the policies and rules and policies. And then we also submitted rules and regulations that we wanted to post at the beach. So tonight we're just discussing that to see if they are acceptable and if any changes are needed before we put it for out to the public in the next Selectmen's meeting.
Board members.
I have no problem with the policies for the ordinance, which we have gone over before. But when we go to the rules, the last sentence says they're going to have a sign that says residents only, and then it says beach.
I don't know who's got an open mic or something, but
it was Dave. Dave has two mics open. Dave Bowers, if you can hear me, you're muted right now, but I had to dismiss your other presence on the call because the feedback was terrible.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, Linda,
So
sorry.
Beach
Yes.
tag to park, but isn't it the more than the beach tag to park? It's beach tag to get into the facility, the beach.
Yes. So the asterisk for the bottom of those was we were saying we should make a separate sign for those two beaches in particular, and I wasn't sure of the verbiage, so that's why it's kind of on the bottom like that. We feel like it shouldn't go on the whole rule sign. We want it to be kind of a separate sign. So if anything was to change, that would be an easy change versus the beach rules. And then we can have, because the actual beach rules, we will post closer to the beach and by the front. So we didn't feel like that information needed to be on the beach per se. It should be more towards the front. So definitely looking for how we want to word that at the bottom. Residents only, tags only, however we want to word that. I would like clarification on that. And up above, per order of Board of Selectmen, anything of that. These are, I had researched some other signs and how some people were addressing the public. I'm definitely open for comments on that. I just that's what I proposed for ours.
I have one question when we get to Brewster Beach, and
Okay.
I got it from somebody who lives on Clark Road. What happens when the parking lot is full? So he said, okay, you can't park there. And they're saying, okay, I'll go park on the street. Because there's nothing that says no parking. All right, so they can park on the street and now walk in. And I'm wondering whether we're going to need to look at some kind of regulations for the parking going up Brewster, Clark Road from the beach, whether we say no parking, from 10 to 5 or whatever it is, because yet we're going to need it to be open when the fireworks go off if we're a regular seat. So I
Right.
feel that we need to add parking regulations on Clark Road.
Agreed. And actually looking at all of the facilities, even at Albee Beach, I know that we're not necessarily going to keep the gate closed, but as it is closed right now, just clarification of where parking for the trails are or where parking in general. So my staff and I've already chatted with them about it. We have a bunch of no parking signs to definitely have clarification of where people are not allowed to park, because our fear is that people will just park in places that really aren't safe. So that's one of the things we are going to address at all beaches, just if showing clearly where they can park and then showing where probably not a safe location to park.
So Christine.
And chime in, Matt, if you think something else.
Christine, I just saw our Chief Rondo light up here. I don't know if he's going to speak with us, but same reaction Linda had. We had a similar issue last night. The Clark Road is awfully skinny down near down near Brewster Beach, and parking on that road could create a problem for fire apparatus and first responders getting down there. And do we need to have some type of work put up parking restrictions on that amount?
So relative to parking, it's already a state law that you cannot park within a travel portion of a road. That's any road, state roads, town roads. Signage obviously is always very helpful to our citizens and guests and visitors. Simply putting signs that say no parking from here to corner or something along those lines would be helpful. But mind you, I wouldn't be too worried about parking in the travel lane. that is always against the law, the travel portion. So in Clark Road or on Forest Road down by Kerry Beach and so forth, that whole thing is the travel lane. You just simply can't park in the travel lane of a road. It's against the law. And that is a state ticket. That's not a town ordinance violation. It's a state summons. And the vehicle is also subject to be towed. So reminder signs there would be helpful. That would be good, but they're certainly not required. And I'll leave that to, that's a policy matter that I think the Board of Selectmen need to address in terms of if you want signage there or not. But I'm just letting you know that we can enforce that, and we'll be happy to do so. At whatever the Board of Selectmen wants to do, we'll be happy to execute. But it is enforceable as it stands right now. Thank you.
So maybe that's the question for us to chew on: is do we want signs? We're going to get pushback for sign, for clutter of signs, but do we also want to give the members of the public at least a good heads up that they shouldn't park there? What do you guys think?
I've watched some some soccer games on Brewster Field, and you could pull your car pretty well off the travel lane on Clark Road. So I think that we should put some signs up to just let them know, because I think that we've got that one beach that's open to the public, and I think the residents of that area are concerned that once the parking lot gets filled, and I think you do a swim meet, maybe one of the places where you see it, you're going to start having cars up the road. And so I think we should put some signs on if we don't want it.
Other members?
Yeah, I agree with that, but they need to be on both sides.
Okay. Do we have to change? We don't have to change an ordinance, if I understand our beloved Chief Rondo. We don't have to do any ordinance changes here. Is that right?
My only concern is that if there is adequate space to park completely off of the traveled way, one could argue that you currently don't have the jurisdiction to restrict the parking. That's why if you look at the ordinance, there are several locations. I'll read one for you, and that's for example, along Forest Road, no parking on either side of Forest Road from Sewell Road to Hopewell Point Road. There are specific restrictions that you've created to deal with this sort of issue where there may actually be adequate space to park off of the traveled way. I hate to default to ordinance changes, but I think someone could potentially park there and be exempt from what we currently have in place.
So, Matthew, I think that is true, what you said, and the remedy for that is obviously what you just suggested. I would be happy to work with you on crafting a very short ordinance that the Board of Selectmen could adopt in a situation like that. And we could do an analysis and an assessment and figure out what areas you would need to do. That is an option, and make it a town ordinance or add it to our town ordinances, whatever the Board of Selectmen wishes to do.
So we could also do that in a time frame. Let's say from like the month of June through, August.
Labor Day.
Labor Day, yep.
So I think there's a bias here to have some type of notification to the public that you can't park out there. What seems to be a little unclear in the conversation is how do we go about doing this? Our beloved chief has raised his hand and said he'd work with you, Matt. I'm wondering if you two guys could square that up with Christine's help as well, and next week or whenever you come back to us, have an answer. Just here's the answer, here's how we're going to do it. You guys okay with that?
I think it's a fantastic idea. Yep. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Linda.
Yeah, I also then go down onto Kerry Beach, and this next to the last one says no launching of kayaks, canoes, and paddle boards. Yet I thought on the far side of that beach we permitted that, so I circled that.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, because that was where I was going, because one of the features of the fixing up of the Kerry Beach is that we're gonna have a little kayak launch area, as you start up the Forest Road incline. So
But
that
my
needs-
question is that necessarily at the beach or is that on the other side of the road?
No, it's.
I thought we were doing it across the street from the beach, correct?
Right now, it's at the very left-hand side. Right now, it's at the very left-hand side of the beach, right before the woods begin.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
so
okay.
Christine,
So
you
that's
know,
fine,
when you-
yep.
you know, when you put your little fence out there, your virtual fence, there's an
Yes,
area at the, you know, heading up Forest Road that's got a little walkway down. It's kind of where all the drainage kind of runs down there. I think that's where, not I think, that's where Dave Ford in his plan said that's where we want to put the kayak launch area.
Also,
Okay, so-
across Cary Beach, that's all private property. The town owns nothing on the other side of Cary Beach, although as a courtesy, they let snowmobiles go through in the winter.
Okay, so you got that, Christine?
yes, so my question to you would be, I think the new launch only launched outside designated area. So
Yes.
do we, yes, so outside designated area or inside designated area. So I will just get clarification on those so they match up because Albee Beach is the same way.
Yep.
Okay, okay, so we'll make sure those.
Okay, good, good. Anything else? So we got to go do that. Matt, Christine, and the chief are going to work on signage. We need clarification, not clarification, we just need to make a couple of fixes on words. And
Yes, just for, especially in the Albee and Cary Beach for the residents only beach tag sign, how we want that worded as well.
Yep.
Right.
And
the other thing where we have the signs, which aren't part of the rules, which is that very bottom, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Christine, related to this, as you come into the Albee parking lot, you're going to leave those signs up that just simply say "Don't park here."
We actually ordered new ones. I know that some are duct tape. We have ones that will go down. And then, yes, we are going to revamp that front area to show trail parking. So we have a little bit open area. We really don't want them to block that gate at all. Whether closed or open, it can't be blocked in case someone needs to get down there. And then we'll just make sure all the signs are out in front.
And one of the things that I think the chamber brought up, or maybe you folks brought up, somebody brought it up, is making sure once we get this thing all sorted, and we'll have our public hearing to do that, we need to be kind of clear with people about guests that don't pay a lot of attention to our beaches until the time they decide to come here. We're going to have to figure out how we make sure they know what's going on. So minimize the surprises, I guess, would be how do we get the communications out there?
Yes, and we've already kind of gone online, did some searches, and noticed where our beaches were popping up. So we can then, once we have the correct words for clarification, kind of respond to people and give them a heads up, as well as letting regular people who like groups per se, just a reminder that we're still not doing groups and just let them know of the change of policy.
You do know, yeah. Christine, thank you. She's doing some Google Analytics. We do have an analytics capability on the town website as well. Keith Simpson can pull a report for you if you need it. Okay, anything else?
Perfect, thanks.
Mr. Pinio, anything else here? Okay, with that, thank you, Christine. Thank you, Matt.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
You should likely make a motion to schedule a public hearing for that date specific.
What date do we need to do it for, Matt?
I move that we set the date of May 20th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. for a public hearing on the town's beach ordinance.
I have a motion from our esteemed colleague. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion from another esteemed colleague. Any discussion? Okay, let's call the vote, Matt. Thank you for reminding me.
Yep, sure. Dave Senical?
Yes.
Linda Murray?
Yes.
Paul O'Brien?
Yes.
And Dave Bowers?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your patience. Okay. And thanks again, Christine. Thanks, Matt. Other business. Do we have any other business? Okay, committee reports. Let's start with Selectman Murray.
Okay, I attended today a emergency operations meeting, and yesterday I zoomed into the Alliance Preservation's award to the Electric Llamas. It was an achievement award for their project on the electric building, and I was glad to be there, and it was exciting that they got that award. That's all I have.
Linda zoomed in. All right, that's cool. Mr. Senical.
Well, I attended a zoning board of adjustment meeting on Monday. It was quite lengthy. We didn't get out of that meeting till after 10 o'clock. I couldn't have believed that. Anyway, that's all I have.
Planning board was 11 p.m. last night, so that's why Brad's probably not here.
Yeah.
Brad has some deadlines.
Mr. Bowers. Mr. Bowers, do you have committee reports?
No meetings.
Okay, sir. And yeah, I attended the planning board, and much to what you all out there would think, I didn't say much, if anything, so I wasn't the guy that caused it to run till 11 o'clock last night.
I don't believe that.
Thank you very much for your input.
I agree.
But thank you for your input as well. That's very thoughtful of you to do that. I also attended the emergency operation team meeting this morning, and these guys are awesome. They're just awesome. And that's all I have to report. Okay, Mr. Pinio, Town Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to confirm with the board, based on tonight being a fairly lengthy agenda, we determined that if it was a lengthy agenda that we may want to push a Libby Board of Trustees meeting to next Wednesday, which would be the 13th. I'd like to recommend that on the 13th at 6:30, the Board of Selectmen meet, first of all, to just review anything that we need to with Mr. Sims, and secondly, to hold a Libby Board of Trustees meeting to determine whether or not we are going to open the Libby Museum for the summer of 2020 based on the current conditions due to COVID-19. Does that seem like a reasonable approach?
I'm fine with that.
Fine with that.
Very good. I also attended the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance, where they recognized the Electric Llamas for their work. We're going to try to get that a copy of that presentation and get that up on the town website. It was excellent. Two of our task forces have scheduled meetings. First meeting is May 12th at 10 a.m. for the 4th of July events. And the second meeting is for the Granite Man. That's scheduled for May 14th at 6 p.m. Hoping to get the remainder of those scheduled tomorrow. I was involved in a kickoff meeting for the reevaluation with Municipal Resources, Inc. and New Hampshire DRA. That process should be starting shortly. We've got a press release, which will be going up on the town website. We've got a press release, which will be going out into the papers. So that process is going to initiate. Initially, they're not going to do any internal reviews on recent sales, but this press release will be out very shortly. The household hazardous waste collection, there will be one held the third Saturday of May. Couple things to be aware of related to COVID-19. If you bring materials in a can, you're not going to receive that can back, and they're not going to give that back. So any materials that you bring that you expect to return, that's not going to happen. You're also being asked to please wear a face covering so that we're keeping that social distancing. And if we can't keep the social distancing, then we want people to wear those masks. And lastly, the only place that you're going to be able to obtain a pass is going to be at the site at that time, just so you're aware. And lastly, effective Friday, solid waste is going to begin collecting metal and construction debris again. Couple of things, again, try to maintain social distancing from staff. Please wear a mask. And there will be a box provided for you to put a check. And again, it's check only. We are going to keep the swap shop closed, and we are also going to continue working winter hours at this time. That's being reevaluated on a weekly basis. At this point, Mr. Chairman, that's all that I have for the town manager's report.
Jim, you wanna fill us in on Huggins Hospital Street Fair?
Oh, yes, thank you. I wasn't in the office today. Huggins Hospital has reached out to us regarding their temporary event permit. They are rescinding their permit, and that fair is going to be postponed until 2021. They're not going to try to reschedule it this year. That is actually going to be completely postponed for this year. Thank you, Paul.
No, that's okay. Thank you. And sad news on that. Okay. Hey, Mr. Harriman, thanks for joining. I'm glad you're back.
Thank you.
You'll be reading all about my sterling performance in this meeting tonight. You'll probably hear it from some of them. Any questions from the press? Alyssa, are you out there?
Hey. I just asked that Mr. Pinio, when you put a copy on the website of that wonderful award for the electric llamas, would you also please send a press release to the Granite State News?
Yeah, we can work on something for that, Alyssa.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's great news. Okay, anything else? It says on our agenda we're supposed to have public input, but we've already done that, so we won't do that. I would like to just thank you all for your patience with me. There's a public service announcement.
Excuse me. Second. We have two public inputs. We have one in the beginning and one at the end.
Oh, we do?
Yes, we do.
I'm really bad at this. Okay, what's our end public input? Do we have any public input?
Can you hear me? This
I
is
can.
Suzanne.
Oh, hi.
Okay, thank you. Hi. Good meeting. I would like to ask that you put a copy of the draft beach ordinance up on the website as well, please, for your upcoming hearing.
Okay.
I would like to weigh in to get you thinking about the trail parking at the Albee Beach. We have 3 sites in town. We have the Fernal Station, the Cotton Valley parking area, and we have downtown. I feel that area, that outside the fence area should be for emergency vehicles and police to turn around in. Second, the L-CHIP grant. Did the Board of Selectmen sign that document, or are they going to be required to sign it when things become more finalized? It's my understanding the town is on the hook for that if things go belly up. So I'd like eventually an answer to that. And then third, regarding the funds for the museum, I'm disappointed to hear that not once prior to the multitude of warrant articles that we've discussed over the years has there been discussion about appropriations by the public, for the public, regarding site work or any exterior work. I'm not talking the building, I'm talking the grounds around the building, the water, the sewer, the telephone, the underground telephone lines and so forth. So I feel that should be a separate warrant article coming up this year as to once he gets a handle on what that site work is going to require, that a warrant article be put in to raise those funds. I don't think that the water and sewer fee people, the people that have to pay fees, should be tacked on to them. And yet, as myself as a taxpayer, I don't want to pay for it either. But that should have been discussed openly and been very transparent about those external costs, and that never came up. And then the last part of that exterior work is Depot Road. Again, I'll read to you what was said by Mr. Ford at the deliberative session 2017 or thereabouts. He provided a brief overview, you must have one on file, of the need to address the property line and the layout of the road, as this would make the road an official town road. So my question would be, can someone find out what the status of that road is? What's deeded as far as easements and roadway? Thank you.
Suzanne, what
I don't
road was
need
that?
answers. I don't need any answers tonight. I'd just like you to look into that.
What road was that?
I think Mr. Bowers had a question. Mr. Dave, do you have a question?
What road was that?
Depot
What
Road,
road?
that little Depot Road, Railroad Road, Railroad Depot Road. I don't know the official name of it.
The little one that's about a block
Railroad
long.
Avenue.
The one that's about a block long?
I can't understand.
It goes.
The one that runs from the train station up to the crossroad? It's a short road.
It's the dirt section of Railroad Avenue.
Correct.
The dirt section of road, okay.
From the boat
That's
launch.
That's different from Depot Road, I think.
I think what Suzanne is talking about is the road from the boat launch that goes into Back Bay. It's a dirt road. On the bay side are the condominiums. On the right-hand side is the freight building. And that road terminates just before you go into the Fossfield parking area. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And my apologies. I apologize for not knowing we do public input twice. My bad. Okay. Anything else? Board members. Public service announcements. Sunday's Mother's Day. It's an important day. So I guess, we are going to go into non-public. So do I need a motion to adjourn and then a motion to go into non-public? Is that how it works?
No, you need a motion to go into non-public, and I so move.
Second.
Okay. There we go. This is easy. All those in favor, roll call vote, Mr. Solomon?
Roll call.
Dave Senical. I think that, yes. Okay, Linda Murray,
Yes.
Paul O'Brien,
Yes.
Dave Bowers,
Yes.
and Brad Harriman.
Yes.
Motion unanimously passes.
Okay. And now, are we done here? So now we go into non-public?
Correct.
Yes, Mr.
Good night,
Chairman.
everybody.
Leave this room and we will go into the non-public room.
Leave this room and go to another room. See ya.